This is Algebra 1, Section 3.4, Day 2 notes. So first we're working on example 2. So example 2 says, let f of t be the outside temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, t hours after 6 a.m. Okay, so t represents the number of hours after 6 a.m. That's what the input is. The output, f of t, is the outside temperature, specifically in degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, it says explain the meaning of each statement. All right, this says f of 0 equals 58. So the 0 is the input, which is the t. So t is the number of hours after 6 a.m. So that means 0 hours after 6 a.m. is what that's talking about. All right, if it's 0 hours after 6 a.m., then that means it is at 6 a.m. And then this is the output, which is the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. So at 6 a.m., the outside temperature is 58 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's what that statement means. Okay, the next one says f of 6 equals n. This is the input, which is the t. So that means 6 hours after 6 a.m. Now, if it's 6 hours after 6 a.m., then that means it's at 12 p.m. The temperature, the outside temperature, is in. So it's in degrees Fahrenheit. We don't know what in is, but it's just what it states. Okay. This one represents F of 3.5. That represents the temperature when it is 3.5 hours after 6 a.m. And then this F of 9 represents the temperature 9 hours after 6 a.m. Okay, so let's start with 3.5 hours after 6 a.m. If you do 6 to 7 to 8 to 9, that's 3 hours, so it's at 9:30. Now, if you do 9 hours after 6 a.m., you do 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 12 to 1 to 2 to 3. That's at 3 p.m. Now, notice the less than symbol. So, the outside temperature at 9:30 a.m. is less than the outside temperature at 3 p.m. So that's what the meaning of that statement is. Okay. This says you'd cook a turkey in an oven for 3 hours and 45 minutes. All right. F of T is the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit of the turkey. All right. So I'm going to write that right above here. So F of T, the output, is the temperature of the turkey in degrees Fahrenheit. T is hours after being placed in the oven. So T is the number of hours it was in the oven. So explain the meaning of each statement. So F of 0, 0 is T. That's the, how I can tell is it's the input in the parentheses, and right here, T is the input. So T is 0. That means 0 hours in the oven. The output is the degrees Fahrenheit. So after 0 hours, which would basically mean when you start, the turkey is 67 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically, once you get it out of the fridge and you put it in the oven right at the starting point before it's cooked, the turkey is 67 degrees Fahrenheit. So this once again is T. So that means 3.75 hours after being cooked. Then the 165 is degrees Fahrenheit. So after cooking for 3.75 hours, the turkey's temperature is 165 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, this means after cooking for 3 hours. The temperature after cooking 3 hours. This means the temperature after cooking 4 hours, and they are equal. So it means that the temperature of the turkey is the same at 3 hours, at 4 hours in the oven. So it's probably reached the hottest part of the oven, and so it's not going to get any hotter than what the oven's set at, and that's probably why it's the same. All right, or maybe it's cooled down, who knows? Okay, this means the temperature after cooking. The input is 3.75, so that's the T, that's the time, 3.75 hours. This means the temperature after cooking 4 hours, and keep in mind that greater than symbol. So I'm going to say the temperature of the turkey after 3.75 hours is greater than or is hotter than, either one, the temperature after 4 hours. Now, it did say in the instructions to this that the turkey is only going to cook for 3 hours and 45 minutes. So I'm assuming they took it out at 3.75. So then 4 hours it's been cooling on the counter, and that's probably why it's getting cooler. Okay, so we did these problems yesterday. Let's go down and look at example 6. All right, so it says the graph of G shows how far a helicopter is from its destination after taking off. So this function represents a second flight. So you have your first flight in the graph. This equation is the second flight. So this equation is flight number 2. All right, f of x is the number of miles it is from its destination. So f of x is the number of miles, not that it's traveled, from its destination. All right, x is how many hours it has been traveling. So which flight takes less time? Okay, we can see that this flight, the first flight, takes 3 hours because when it is at this point right here, the y value is 0. That means it's 0 miles from its destination. So that means it is at its destination. So it took 0 hours, or sorry, it took 3 hours to be at the destination. So that means on this flight, on flight number 2, we want f of x to equal 0 because we want it to be 0 miles from its destination, meaning at its destination. So if I go ahead and set this equal to 0, then I can subtract the 350. So I have negative 125x equals negative 350. And then I can divide by negative 125, which I get 2.8. So that means it took 2.8 hours for flight 2 to reach its destination. So what this means is 0 miles from destination. That means literally it's at the destination. And so that means flight 2 takes less time.